Hey friends, price elasticity of supply, PES, measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied of a good to changes in its price. So imagine this, you grow corn and you sell it in a market. And now imagine the price of corn increases by $10. Should you sell more? Can you even sell more? Now, imagine you sell cars. The prices of cars increase by 20%. Can you sell more cars? Why? But should you sell more cars? As with PD, changing prices could affect the quantities supplied, which could also affect production and revenue positively or negatively. This example shows us why it's important to understand the price elasticity of supply. So translating this into the formula, quantity supply is influenced by price. So quantity supply is the dependent variable over here, while price is the independent variable and is in the denominator. Responsiveness signals that there is some degree of change, which is why there's this triangular symbol. And once again, changes are also measured in terms of percentages and not absolute values. And unlike PED, PES usually has a positive sign, which reflects the positive causal relationship between price and quantity supplied that we learned in the previous chapter of demand and supply. So like PED, PES also exists on a spectrum from perfectly inelastic supply with PES being 0 to perfectly elastic supply with PES being infinite. But once again, most goods usually have an inelastic or an elastic supply, and both are reflected in diagrams A and B, so I'll be explaining both diagrams more specifically. In the first diagram, on the left, diagram A, we see that a 10% increase in price from P1 to P2 only leads to a 5% increase in quantity supplied from Q1 to Q2. So this means that the proportion of price increase is higher than the proportion of increase in quantity supplied, which also means that the supply for this good is inelastic. Because if we apply and put these values into the formula, the PES is only 0.5. If you take 5% divided by 10%, it gives you 0.5, which is why goods with an inelastic supply have a PES of less than 1. Now, if you look at diagram B, a 10% increase in price from P1 to P2 leads to a 15% increase in quantity supplied from Q1 to Q2. So this means that the proportion of price increase is lower than the proportion of increase in the quantity supplied. And this means that supply for this particular good is elastic. Using the PES formula, the PES value is definitely more than 1, which is why goods with an elastic supply has a PES of more than 1. And lastly, if the PES value is exactly 1, as we see in this diagram, diagram C, it means that the proportion of change in price is equal to the proportion of change in quantity supplied. And note that the graph of unit elastic supply is very different from the graph of unit elastic demand. Unit elastic demand diagram is a curve, whereas this particular diagram in diagram C are straight lines originating from the origin. So there are 5 key determinants of PES. The first one, and the most important one, is the length of time. The length of time to react, especially in terms of the factors of production required as inputs. So length of time is the most important determinant of PES. It refers to how long producers have to adjust the factors of production to change the quantity supplied. And naturally, as you can imagine, if you're a producer, the longer time it takes for you to adjust your production, the more inelastic your supply is because you take a longer time to respond to changes in price. So in our earlier example of cars and corn, car makers can quickly adjust their assembly lines to make more or less cars. But corn farmers can't magically produce more or less corn. Other factors like the amount of land available or the weather will influence the quantity supplied. The second determinant of PS would be your mobility of the factors of production. So mobility of factors of production basically refer to how mobile, right? How flexible and adaptable your factors of production are. So naturally, the more mobile your factors of production are, the higher elasticity of supply. Firms that can reallocate resources quickly can effectively change the quantity supplied quickly. The third determinant would be what we call spare capacity of firms. if a firm has more capacity that is not used at that point in time, we can imagine that their supply will be more elastic. Firms can once again use this spare capacity to change the quantity supplied. The fourth determinant of PES would be the ability to store stocks, which is quite closely linked to the earlier point. And the last determinant of PES is how fast the cost of production increase. If you think about it, if the cost of production to increase more output increases rapidly, supply would be more inelastic. It is usually more expensive to produce more, so therefore firms will be a bit more cautious about producing more, and therefore the supply becomes inelastic. So in terms of applications of PES, know that the PES of primary commodities are quite different from the PES of manufactured products. Primary commodities usually have quite a low PES and have therefore inelastic supply, while manufactured commodities usually have a higher PES. Why? Because of the time taken to respond to changes in price, which affects things like the cost, primarily due to the time taken to respond to changes in price, as we have covered in the earlier part of this video.